On this episode of Doing the Most, we're making Jack Keller's sweet potato wine.
Homemade brews and various how-tos, everything from meat to roast, bake creation, fermentation, inebriation, doing the most.
Fall is here. It is crisp outside here in Oklahoma. Temperatures have been in the 30s Fahrenheit up to the 50s Fahrenheit. So it's basically almost winter here, honestly. And so for the month of October, we have been making some fall themed videos, and today is no exception. We're doing Jack Keller's sweet potato wine. Now, the typical rules of this Jack Keller wine series apply. Jack's recipes typically don't end up as a 1 gallon volume by the time you get to secondary. So if you're going to brew up any of the recipes in this series, you'll either want to scale up by 20 to 30% or have a smaller vessel to rack to in secondary. This is a part of our Jack Keller series sponsored by Homebrew Ohio. Big thank you to Homebrew Ohio for providing some of the gear and equipment to make this series possible. There will be links to the gear and equipment used in this video in the description if you need to pick anything up for your homebrewing supplies. This recipe is relatively simple. It's not got a lot of moving parts. Mostly, you're going to spend your time chopping and simmering your sweet potatoes, and then be prepared to have a lot of sweet potatoes to eat going forward, because the sweet potatoes actually don't go in the fermentation, just the sweet potato liquid from that simmering. So before we jump into this, I will tell you one other thing, one little tidbit for when we get to our tasting. This didn't go as planned. And a lot of you have said before in the comments, why don't you ever show us things that go wrong? I want to see the mistakes and see the failures from the channel. Well, this is the first of our Jack Keller wine videos we're publishing where something did go wrong. But we'll get to that when we get to the tasting. First, let's take a look at the ingredients. The ingredients for Jack Keller's sweet potato wine are 6 pounds of sweet potatoes, 1 pound of golden raisins, 2 pounds of light brown sugar, water to 1 gallon, 1.5 teaspoons of tartaric acid, 1 teaspoon of pectic enzyme, 1/8 teaspoon of tannin powder, 1 teaspoon of yeast nutrient, and Lalvin EC 1118 yeast. So those are the ingredients for Jack Keller's sweet potato wine. It's fairly simple. It just takes a lot of prep to get to the part where you mix everything up. So now that you know what's in it, let's take a look at how it's done. This recipe begins with a lot of sweet potato. There were no instructions to peel it, so I just cubed it. All of this sweet potato goes right into our Dutch oven. Then we get that covered with some water and bring it up to a boil. Once we've got a nice boil going, we will give it a little bit of a stir. Then after a 25-minute simmer, we remove the sweet potatoes, and you can just have those for dinner or turn them into a sweet potato pie. We no longer need them for this wine. Get any remaining liquid out of there, and then we're going to start building our wine base. And first goes in that brown sugar, then our raisins, and then I'm going to pour in our sweet potato water to cover and get all that dissolved. Stir. And once that's dissolved, we'll start adding our powders. Here goes the tannin, our tartaric acid, our yeast nutrient, and we'll give that another stir. And then we'll pour in some cold water to bring this up to 1 gallon. We're going to cover that. We'll make a note on the outside of what that is, and then we'll let it come down to room temperature. Once we've got that at room temperature, it's time to add in our pectic enzyme and our yeast. Here, Jack recommends EC1118 yeast, a relatively aggressive yeast. Then we'll cover that again and let it ferment. It'll take about 2 to 3 weeks to complete fermentation. Every few days, you'll want to open that up and stir it around just to keep the raisins in there wet. We don't want anything to be able to grow on top of them. A few weeks later, we rack that to secondary. And then after a week or two of cold crashing, we get it bottled up. So as I said, something did go wrong. And that something is that this wine stalled out. But to stick with the spirit of our experiment, brewing our way through Jack Keller's home winemaking book, and by the way, you can find a link in the description if you would like to buy that book. That's the book where all these recipes are coming from. Typically, I say in these videos that we're going to try all of these wines dry. We're not going to do any back sweetening. Well, in this instance, this wine stalled out, and it stalled out kind of sweet, and it did that using EC1118, which is a very aggressive yeast, and there was nutrient in there. But because I wanted to brew by the book, I decided not to do anything about the stall and just bottle it as is. So your mileage may vary if you decide to brew this recipe yourself, which it's sweet potato season right now. So here in like a week, 2 weeks, you're gonna have ample opportunity to buy sweet potatoes. If you do this, yours may end up going dry and may require back sweetening. I'm gonna taste the stalled out and clarified version of this, which clarified on its own due to cold crashing. But I do want you to be aware that what I am tasting is going to be potentially a lot sweeter than the product that you would get on the other end of things. I may try and brew this again sometime in the future just to see if I can't get it to go all the way dry, but in the spirit of the series, we're brewing by the book. Sweet potato wine. And as you can see, it clarified really nicely. It's got this nice kind of amber gold color, and cold crashing was really all we needed to get it clear. There is booze on the nose. You can definitely tell that it did ferment, but it also smells quite sweet. And it is quite sweet. And there's that classic kind of cidery flavor that you sometimes get with country fruit wines. And my understanding and my experience has been that that ages out. And so probably in 6 months to a year, that cidery kind of punchy flavor should dissipate and leave you with whatever remaining fermented flavors are there. It doesn't taste like sweet potatoes. It is kind of earthy, but the sweetness in there really does a good job of disguising a lot of the other flavors. It tastes like a sweet dessert wine. Nothing too incredibly distinct about it. If I was going to do this again, I would probably mash in my sweet potatoes, maybe trying to rely on the enzymes in them, but probably adding some alpha amylase enzyme and hold that at like 150, 151 and try and get some of those starches to convert into sugars. And then I would probably do some staggered nutrient additions and a pretty rigorous degassing in order to try and make sure that went over the finish line and didn't stall out so sweet. I think that would give us more of a blank canvas to work with, and then we could work on acid, tannin, and sweetness balance once it went all the way dry. Unfortunately here, I failed to get this to go dry just going by Jack's recipe. Overall, still an interesting process, interesting product, even though it's a bit too sweet for my palate, but a fun experiment nonetheless. Again, this video is part of a series where we're brewing Jack's recipes from the Jack Keller home winemaking book, and you can pick up a copy of that through the link in the description, and that link helps support our channel. And again, a big thank you to Homebrew Ohio for sponsoring this video series. Check out the playlist that this is associated with. We've got several other Jack Keller wine videos out there for you to check out, and those ended up having a bit better of a result than this one did. If you haven't yet subscribed, I won't hold it against you, because you can just go down and click that subscribe button down there right now and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Also, you can join our Discord server. It's a great community of homebrewers willing to help you out, be your newest, bestest friends, and it's just kind of a silly, wacky place to hang out when you're bored on the internet. And you can follow us on Instagram, where occasionally we post pretty pictures of stuff that we're brewing. Until next time, happy brewing, especially if you've got a sweet tooth, and I hope your sweet potato wine goes a little bit better than mine did. Cheers.